Because for the subconscious mind, what you're asking is for it to enter into something unknown. And that brings us into the second part of the equation, which is our pleasure. Okay. Pleasure in the subconscious just means the known, the things we are familiar with. And this is why we can end up in situations that are very negative and we see finding ourselves in it because the subconscious mind is familiar with it. It's why we end up with certain relationships over and over and over again. It's not because everyone in the world is like these people that we keep meeting. No, it's because that behavior, that reaction, and where it leads us is a familiarity to the subconscious mind. So keep in mind, when you talk about pleasure in the subconscious mind, you're not talking about feeling good. You're talking about something that's familiar. And when you're talking about pain, you're not talking about something just hurting. You're talking about the outcomes and things being unknown in that equation. So now that we got that and we understand that, we're going to look at this critical, this subconscious mind and all of this information that we take in. We do this from about the age of birth to about 8 years old. Okay, it is till the age of 8 that we do this, but we develop what now they call a critical filter or a critical mind. That critical mind, it develops to protect all that information that we've gathered over those 8 years that tells us what the world is. Now, that has 2 layers to it. In that critical mind, you have a conscious critical mind and you have the subconscious critical mind. So when you take information in, when you go, okay, I want to do something different, and you make that declaration, that goes into the critical mind conscious area, and that sits there for about an hour and a half before it drops down into the subconscious critical mind area, where it sits for 16 to 24 hours. And by the time it gets to your subconscious, and now the only way it gets in there to the subconscious mind for that filter is when we either go to sleep or we enter hypnosis. That's the only time that goes in there. Okay? So by the time it gets in there, right, it's been diluted and distorted. So now that change, that information you've given, it's not going to outweigh the current one. It's not going to have a greater pull, right? Because it took too long to get in there. Okay. And this is why they tell you to do affirmations in the morning. Why? Because you're in an alpha state. And in that alpha state, you can bypass the critical mind and you can quickly get a suggestion in. Right? Now, how well that suggestion sticks depends on the techniques, the affirmations, the feeling, and how deeply you enter into that state. Now, above that is what we call your conscious mind. And that's where your logic, your reasoning, willpower, your decision making, your analysis, all that is there in the conscious level. And that represents 12% of your total mind power. The rest of this stuff is going on is subconscious. That's 88%. So just think about this. Is 12% going to outweigh the 88% when you want to make a change that's significant to your core systems? It isn't. And this is why so many people fail with manifestation. This is why so many people get it wrong. Because they're trying to make a change with the 12%, and 88% doesn't believe that. So that's a key component and extremely important. Now, the primitive mind and all of this, how does this show up? Right? When you think of the primitive mind, fight and flight, freeze. Right? We don't live in the jungle. We don't live in times in which this is something we would express in a more explicit way. We live in the modern era, so fight and flight shows up differently. How fight shows up in today's world is if you at a job and your boss mistreats you or says something and you want to say something to her, but you can't because you're afraid of losing your job. What do? You go to a coworker and you vent. You might go and punch a wall. You might go to the gym and work it out. That idiot, how dare he, that piece of woo, 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 woo. It shows up as a reaction. Now, what happens when you're operating from a place of flight in today's time? And let's say you're in the office, the boss is yelling and shouting, and you don't want to say anything, or they're talking to you a certain way and you don't want to speak. What do? You make yourself small, right? You don't say much. You try to avoid the situation. And what do? Do you go and work out or vent it out? No. You go and go to sleep, right? It causes repression. And repression becomes depression. And this is why you want to sleep. See, sleep is a form of escape, right? Think about it. Oh, it's just so much going. I got to get out of here. I need to go lay down. I need to get out of here for a little bit. So when you're working with someone that understands this and you understand this and you work together, what happens is then you can work with the 12% and they can work with that 88%. And together, what we can do is we can create 100% efficiency in what we're trying to change. That's the power. So the power isn't in what you think you're sitting there saying you're going to do and pushing through. That's a coping mechanism. It's another form of grief masking itself as productivity. Right? When we deal with these things, when we address these things from within with these structures and understanding, and you can work with someone like myself that has that understanding, then you can make long lasting change. Is all this is overnight? Some things can happen in a session. Some things may take multiple sessions. But think about this something taking one or two sessions, or even let's say 10 or 12 sessions versus 10 years, even 1 year.